where in the world would you like us to ship you? I'm Cheryl Doherty of Galaxy Cruises and Tours. Welcome to Travel Talk. Today my very special guest is Bruce Wescott, who has retired from CBP. Welcome aboard, Bruce.
Hi, Cheryl. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Good to be here.
Okay, so why don't we start with the basics? Why do they call it CBP? What does that stand for?
CBP means Customs and Border Protection. It's part of Homeland Security. When they created the Homeland Security, they combined immigration, customs, and agriculture together. And sometimes people get us confused with Border Patrol. They are U.S. Border Patrol. We are U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And you know, it's funny. It started many years ago as U.S. Customs Service. About 1789, George Washington and Congress decided that they needed money, so they created this Tariff Act of 1789 to get money from imported goods coming to our shores. And it's funny, about 100 years later, they found out that they had money. They spent it very wisely. They created new railroad, intercontinental railroad service, roads. They even had enough money to create Washington, D.C. Build all those buildings were built and financed through this act. About 4 weeks after they created this act to get money, they created U.S. Customs Service, and that's how they would regulate the money. It was a pretty good idea. They were even able to purchase like Louisiana, Florida, Texas, and it did very well for itself, and still do very well for itself. But things changed. 2001 changed things.
2001 has changed a lot in the world across the board, and especially the travel industry. So
yes, yeah, that's right. That's right. Things have changed. We have done a lot to make our country safe and our borders safe.
Do you cover airlines, cruises, and people walking over the borders or driving over the borders?
U.S. Customs Border Protection does that, yes, that's right. I've had the pleasure of working on cruise ships, arriving people, which means when they come into the U.S., I make sure they have all the proper documents, making sure that that's who they really are. And we go on a computer system and process them in. I've worked on the cargo ships. I've also worked in the airport. And I've never been down to the southern border or northern border to work, but that's also a busy area to work for.
So it basically covers any way someone is coming into the United States.
That's right. And some people say, we're not the border here. I mean, you know, I don't see any land, but we are the border because we have an ocean between us and the other countries.
Very, very, very good point. Who is the trusted traveler?
Well, trusted traveler are people that we really go through a lot of background investigation and make sure they are trusted to us, because there are a lot of services that they get, and we want to make sure that they are being checked on and make sure they're fine to come into our country, and they are expedited a little bit quicker than others because they are trusted.
So we're talking about global entry.
Global entry, yes. Most of the time what happens is you come into the U.S. and you have it's called the 6059 Form B. And what happens is that form is the form that you fill out. It's how much money you have. Over $10,000. Do you have any fruits or vegetables? That kind of questions. Because you're trusted, we don't ask you for the paper documents, but what happens is you have your own kiosk. And that kiosk is pretty simple. Those questions that are on a 6059B are now on a kiosk push button. If the questions are there, you answer yes or no. They ask you about your money, they ask you about your fruit. And once all the questions are done, you have your fingerprint, your process. You also have your passport, you swipe. And once that's all done, you are then.
It's an amazing way of going in and out of the country. I have the pleasure of having global entry,
Yes.
and it saves a lot of time. I know there have been times when I've flown in from a different country, and you'll fly into an airport like Kennedy, and there'll be 3 or 4 international flights landing at the same time.
Yes.
And you'll have hundreds of people coming off of these flights.
That's right.
Waiting in line. And when you have global entry, to your point, you put your passport down and they take your fingerprints and know who you are. How does someone apply for a global entry card?
You would go online to cbp.gov. You go online there, and under Trusted Traveler and the global entry, it's easy to do. It costs, and which is very reasonable, I feel. And I belong to the program myself, and that goes for about $100 for 5 years. So it's a pretty, I think it's a pretty good service to have.
I think it's a great service
you
to
can
have
go
for
through.
money.
Also, they have another kind of kiosk that the U.S. citizens and Canadians that could use the program has a kiosk that you push down just like the global entry, but it's free. But what happens is you go through the same process, you swipe your passport, finger, you take a picture, answer the questions, and a receipt comes up, and it's given to you, and then you give that to the officer. Officer will then decide to talk with you, and when he's done, he will let you go. But it's a little bit quicker process than standing in line with that paper 6059B.
Can someone from a foreign country get a global entry card?
Yes, you could. There's about, I think, close to 30 other countries
I didn't realize
can
that.
use it. Yes, and they have to go through the same systems as we do. Background check, make sure you are a trusted part of that trusted traveler.
Now, I know when I went to get my global entry, I had to make an appointment at Newark Airport.
That's right.
And actually go and have an interview. And I think the security in the background was amazing that they did. So can you tell us a little bit more about the questions they ask and why they ask those questions?
Well, they have a process there, and I, for a couple of years of my service at Newark Airport, I worked in that global entry. And a lot of background questions are asked of you. What's also nice too, you had said that you can go to Newark Airport. They also have other airports around the country.
Okay.
So if you may be going to another part of the world, and you can enter or exit out of another airport, and you can get processed there. Once it's all done, you will get a notice. I believe it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to say that you are so far trusted. Come on in. And then we go through some questions about yourself, and once it's been approved, an email is sent to you. You probably remember that,
yes,
right? And it's that simple.
And I really do think it saves an incredible amount of time. First of all, when you get to the airport and you're trying to go through security, there's a separate line,
Yes.
which saves an amazing amount of time when you're at the airport trying to check in, and also when you come back in from another country.
Well, also, I almost forgot to tell you, is that because you're paying $100 for 5 years of global entry, you also have part of that TSA. So that's less of your shoes that come off, your clothes, your computers. You also can get processed a little bit faster.
And I noticed that, and I'm noticing that with a lot of people I travel with their company, if they have global entry, they automatically get TSA approved also? That saves them
global
time?
entry, that's right.
Yes.
But if you get...
Are they considered 2 different entities?
Yes, they are. Yes, TSA checks our all the bags going on our planes. So that's $85 if you were just to get. Some people don't know about it, but if for $85 you can get just the TSA process. It speeds you onto your flight.
But if you have global entry, you automatically get the TSA.
Yes,
so
you do.
It's certainly worth the money.
Well, I believe it is, and some people, you know what, some people don't go international flights, so that may be why they pay $85 to use the TSA.
It's still an amazing timeshare.
For $15
yes,
more, you know,
absolutely.
even if you go on one flight.
One flight, one cruise,
That's
one
right.
trip out of
That's
the country.
Right. Yes, it makes a difference. I believe so.
I agree with you. Well, I always I want to run this past you because one of the questions I always get in the company is, Why are people asked to take off their shoes when they go through security to get onto an airplane?
Well, they ask you to take off your shoes, take off your coat sometimes, and open up a bag because probably, let me see, in 2001, there was a gentleman coming off a flight. They thought that he could get away with it, but it turns out that there was a shoe with a bomb inside of it.
Oh my goodness.
And no one would ever think to have something like that, but turns out that it didn't go as well as they planned for. We were able to stop it from creating a serious problem. And his name was, Richard Reed. And he was coming from Flight 63.
Now, would something like that be picked up if someone is walking through the security machines?
You would have to take off your shoes.
You have to take your shoes off.
And then we can take a look at it. Also, they also find that there may be drugs in those shoes too. I've seen people walk around coming off particular flights countries, and their shoes are filled with drugs.
That's
and
very
when you watch them, you'll see the shoes are staying down, but they're moving, and there's a filling of maybe just drugs. It could be jewelry, it could be money. There's many things. So TSA wants to make sure they check everything.
And is there all new equipment coming out now for like computers and electronics that go through security? How do they screen that? What are you actually looking at?
Well, that's a TSA job. That's not
TSA,
mine.
that's not your
I've never
position.
had that one before, that job. But I give them a lot of credit because there's a lot to look at. And I know a lot of the so-called bad guys are always trying to find a way of getting stuff into the country, out of the country. Money, drugs, illegal merchandise. So they're always working on it. So I give TSA a lot of credit trying to figure it out.
I think there are a lot of different organizations working together to keep all of us safe, and people should have a little bit more patience at the airports and when they come out on our cruise ships. They don't realize how important the security truly is. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes, and then we're going to ask Bruce how he got started in the industry and give us some details about what he actually did in his position. So we'll be back with you in a few.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your closet. Still no jobs? Just more stuff? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed. And they're the stuff inside your stuff. Our job is to unlock those jobs. And it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover keytar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
And welcome back. Once again, we're here with Bruce Wescott from Customs and Border Protection. But before we ask Bruce about how he got into his wonderful career, I'd like to circle back to TSA PreCheck for the viewers. TSA PreCheck will be more of a domestic check-in system for people that are traveling, and it'll save you time at the airport and getting onto cruise ships. I understand that if you have a certain credit card, your credit cards may pay for the TSA PreCheck, and they may also pay for global entry, and there is actually an agency in Woodbridge, New Jersey that you can look at online where you can expedite getting that type of certification. So if you have any other questions, we can, certainly get back to that for you. But we're going to circle back to Bruce. So anyway, Bruce, what an exciting career you've had. So let's talk a little bit about you. How did you get interested in this amazing career?
Well, for many years, I wanted to be involved with the law enforcement. And I've got certificates for both special police and auxiliary police. I worked for DOD for about 20 years.
Okay.
And I heard about Customs or hiring, and I applied and I got the job. And to be honest with you, they go through a lot of background. All my neighbors were checked out.
So that's interesting. So if someone is applying for this amazing career in this very important position, what type of a different type of background check do they do on you or anyone else?
I'm not sure what the difference is, but I know it's very thorough, rigorous, and they make sure that we're good for our country. And so the last 17 of my 37 years of federal service, it was working with, starting off with U.S. Customs Service, and then after 9/11 became CBP, U.S. CBP officer, which I'm very happy that I joined, and it's a lot of fun. It's rewarding to know that our borders are safe, and we try to keep them safe.
And we appreciate everything that your organization does to keep us safe and secure in this country.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your duties? What's a typical day like?
Well, depending where you are, sometimes I work at the airport, terminal, which is Newark Airport, Terminal B, Terminal C, and we would arrive flights. Flights were coming in, and we process passengers coming in. We go through the computer system, check and see if that's who they really are. Use their passport, check it out.
So when someone hands you their passport,
yes,
what are you actually seeing? Are you allowed to tell us what you're actually seeing up on the screen?
Well, I'll see the information that I need to see to allow that person to come into our country, making sure it is accurate. We ask them questions along with those probably 5 or 6 questions on that 6059B, and so we want to make sure that they are who they are. Sometimes I work at the cargo area, and we check cargo, making sure it is what it's supposed to be, what they're reporting. And sometimes it's not, and sometimes it is. So we do check it out really well. We have dogs that if we think there's a need for a dog, we will come in and he'll check and see if there's drugs, weapons, that kind of stuff. So that's one. We also do cruise ships. We arrive the passengers. The same kind of computer system we have at the airport is over at the cruise ships in New York.
Now, I just want to circle back to this form that you keep referencing. What exactly is this form, and why does everyone in a party have to fill out the forms?
You're talking about 6050?
Yes, correct.
6059B, yes.
Okay.
Because that's asking you questions. That's asking the vital questions that we need to know. We look at the answers. We will ask you again, making sure you're satisfied.
Are they filled out one per person or one per family?
No, you can have one per family. That's
Okay.
right. Yeah, and nowadays, like I mentioned before, about the kiosks, we now have it set up. You can still go through the paper and talk to us, and we process your passport, look at your questions, look at you, making sure that's who you really are. Or you can go to different kiosks. We have one that if you're a U.S. citizen, you can get all the answers put right on the kiosk. The Globe Entry has their own kiosk, so it's a pretty good system. And I don't think we'll eventually get rid of that form, because sometimes people do need to fill that out, and there's no kiosk.
Do you ever walk directly onto the airplanes or cruise ships to meet with people? Like if a special plane comes in or something?
Yes, that's right, I do.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Every person coming into the U.S. has to be arrived, which means we have to check to see that these people are who they really are. And we do the process on the computer system and let the system know that you came in. Who comes in, any and everybody.
So even if someone is famous, they don't get a get-out-of-jail-free card and they don't have to do this?
No. President Bill Clinton, I arrived his flights many times, and he has to get processed just like everyone else. Fills out that 6059B card, and movie stars, actresses.
Have you met any very famous people?
Quite a few, quite a few.
Can you share that with us? Or?
Well, sure. Luci Pavarotti,
Oh, my
I
goodness.
processed him, a fine gentleman, rest his soul. He's very nice about it. Nobody usually gets upset about us talking to him. We don't try to hold them up. We're not there to hold or let them miss a flight.
Right.
They may have connecting flight. Julie Andrews.
Oh my goodness.
I processed, I think, a number of times.
She's amazing.
Yes, yeah. So the job itself is a lot of fun job, and I try to make it as pleasant as possible.
And meeting these amazing people and dealing with the public, you can probably write a book from the amazing things that
Different
have happened.
stories, sure.
I'd like to kind of get into the freight part a little bit and ask you some questions about some interesting stories. Years ago, I worked at Raleigh-Durham Airport in North Carolina, and I remember the customs agents had taken some rugs off of an international flight, and they took them into one of the hangars, and they unrolled these rugs on the floors of the hangars, and all of a sudden they're vacuuming these rugs, and we're all going over saying what is going on. And when they were vacuuming the rugs, they were vacuuming cocaine out of these really expensive rugs.
Wow.
And that's how the drug smugglers are trying to get the cocaine into the country, by having this very fine powder
Sure.
all across the rugs.
Yes.
So that was incredible to see. So you must have some amazing, interesting stories over the years. Can you share any of those with us?
Sure. One of the stories I want to share with you is I saw this gentleman walking with the big bags, and he and I talked for a little bit. We put the bags on the counter so we can open up. I asked him all the questions on that 6059B, and he said he had nothing to declare. I opened up the bag, and there had a lot of clothes there, and it was pretty filled up with clothes. And as I was going through the clothes to see what else he had, I found something amazing. Why it was there, don't know at the time, but it was 2 dead hawks.
In his
bag.
Oh my
yes.
goodness, in his luggage.
No protection on and no plastic
my
bag or
goodness.
nothing, just laying there. And when I asked him what was the reason for these birds, he said that this was something he wanted to bring into the U.S. to get stuffed. And I said, wow, that's interesting. And it turns out I talked to my companion at the time. She worked for agriculture and found that those 2 birds were illegal to come into the U.S.
Oh my goodness.
And he was fined. They were taken away from him, and they were on the endangered species list.
Wow.
So that was kind of sad, you know. But then I remember talking to a mother, who was probably in her 40s, and her son. And I said, "How was your trip?" They were coming from Italy, 6059B.
There you go.
And we were talking about what went on. It turns out that the lady lost her father in Italy. He passed away, and that was her son with her. And I asked questions about what happened, and father passed away. And I'm sorry to hear it. So I said, we need to open up your bags. And went over those questions, 6059B, and this is why you do it, because you have to make sure that you give a lot of chances. And when I opened up the bags, she had 4 bags. 3 of them were filled with fruits and vegetables.
Oh my goodness.
Fresh fruits and vegetables. So agriculture got involved, and they were able to take it. Unfortunately, she got fined, but that's what happens.
Are there unusual ways that people try to smuggle things into the country?
All the time.
For anything you can share?
Well, you were talking about that that rug.
The rugs.
We used to get a bunch of those, and also they would also try to get them through because they were rugs that at a high duty rate.
Right.
And so that's how we get some of our revenue. And some people will try to possibly squeak that by us, thinking that or telling us it's not an expensive rug. But when we open it up, we find that may be different, and they get fined for it, and they get penalized for it. So,
kind of like the old I Love Lucy show, if you remember when she was coming from Italy with when they put the cheese in the trombones and the trumpets. If you remember that, that was
baby, right.
that many years ago.
Yes, yes.
And I've heard stories about people cutting canes open and filling canes with drugs and things like that.
Yes.
Have you seen interesting things like that too?
We even had a dog come on our plane. Our dog, After the passengers are off, we had a dog sniffing around, and he was on top of his seat, and he was clawing through it. It looked like he was trying to get to China. He was really hard getting through there, and it turns out the aroma of the drugs that a passenger who sat there got the nose of the dog involved, tried to find the drugs. Drugs weren't there, but later on we did find the drugs.
Very interesting.
Yes.
So what happens to someone if they break the law?
Depending what kind of law and where they're. What happens is we detain the most of the violators, and we have our ICE agents will take care of it, or maybe something that local police are involved, and we notify them, and they'll come take care of this passenger, and it's an easy process, and it's a good process.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so we're getting ready to wrap up. So any advice that you can give to our viewers? Any travel advice?
First of all, I want to tell you to be honest.
Be honest.
Because again, when you have that 6059B and you fill that out and it's not accurate, and we open up the bag or we research a little further, you can be in more trouble than you thought because you weren't honest about it and let us know what's going on. So the job itself is a great job. I believe I met people from all around the world, so it's a good time. I just retired, and
congratulations,
and I'm having a good time with that too.
Wonderful,
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being my very special guest today, and a wealth of knowledge, and congratulations on your retirement, and may you have many, many, many more happy years as you think over everything you've done in the past. And I guess it's time to wrap up, so I just want to thank everybody for watching Travel Talk today. And remember, every day's a gift, so travel. Bon voyage.
We're back with 4 awesome discoveries you probably didn't hear about this week.
They were once thought to be useless, pieces of DNA that aren't genes. We now know this junk DNA can act as switches that turn genes on and off. But how do these segments of DNA, called enhancers, find and activate their target genes in a cell's nucleus? Researchers have captured the moment in a living fly embryo to help understand the mechanism. Using fluorescent tags, the gene shows as green. Turns out when the enhancer, blue, makes physical contact, boom, red. Gene activity activated.
This invention could improve lab on a chip. Engineers have developed a way to manipulate tiny droplets of blood and other biological fluids by having them surf on acoustic waves in oil. They can move them, split them, mix them, all without leaving a trace, overcoming a major drawback in current models that rely on solid surfaces. The new lab-on-a-chip platform could form the basis of a programmable, rewritable biomedical chip for use in diagnostics and research.
On an evening stroll one night in 1670, you might have witnessed the sudden birth of a new star. 348 years later, astronomers studying the dim remains of the double-star collision that created that new star have made the first definitive detection of radioactive molecules in interstellar space, a form of aluminum monofluoride, cast out from the star's dense inner layer by the crash. As one of the researchers put it, we are observing the guts of the star torn apart 3 centuries ago by a collision. How cool is that?
The long-dormant Yellowstone supervolcano is powered by heat from Earth's core. Or is it? A recent study finds no evidence for that long-held belief. New underground X-ray-like images suggest the Yellowstone volcano was produced when a gigantic oceanic plate dove under the western U.S. 30 million years ago, crashing the party at Earth's mantle with unusual rocks, which led to volcanic eruptions, as party crashers sometimes do.
And there you go. See you next week with 4 more awesome discoveries with funding from NSF.